projects. This is photos of burlesque. You put these things together, you enter contests, and this series that I did on burlesque last year won in PEN's Faces competition. So the best type of marketing that you can do for yourself is something that someone else does for you. And that's one of the great things about entering contests and getting your work out that way, is suddenly somebody else does the work to market your images, and suddenly like all these people place it all over the place. We also had, thanks to Sony, Sony actually, World Photography Organization, had a show last year at the Aperture Gallery, and American Photo was one of the co-hosts of this thing, and I showed my burlesque images, and they thought, in that same year, a couple of other photographers were doing burlesque books, and suddenly they thought, hey, this is a theme. So they ended up, because of that one show, doing a story on burlesque, and this is the opener. And then these are some of the other dancers, Tempest Storm, Dixie Evans, and the amazing Knicker Kittens from Sweden. So, it's actually a very cool thing that suddenly you do a body of work, and eventually, like if photo magazines pick up on, that's the best people that can do stories about you, because people that read photo magazines are people in the industry. So that's a great way to get noticed. In terms of the studio, a few of the behind the scenes things that we've got, this is our setup. My main workspace is a 30-inch monitor. I have my current MacBook Pro, and I have my old G4. We don't have a ton of computers. I work a lot with a laptop too, but the most important thing we've got in the studio is your backup. So this is where, these are basically file cabinets for 40 terabytes worth of photographs. So it's like each of these hard drive enclosures holds 5 eSATA hard drives, so they're just as fast as shooting to an internal hard drive, and yet they give you the flexibility to back up all your images and have everything on a redundant backup. So every year's worth of images, basically, I figured out fits on 2 terabytes. So each of these enclosures has 5 2-terabyte drives, and the 5 that are on the left side back up the 5 that are on the right. So if I had a drive failure on the right, its exact copy is on the left. Unfortunately, I haven't had hard drive failures, but you sort of, plan to succeed by, having backups of everything like that. And I think, the other great thing about digital is you can take these aren't that big, so we can take this on the road. I could never take, the file cabinets from the studio with me. I can't even move them empty. They're so big and heavy that, this is a very important part of the digital workflow, is making sure that, your images are there for the rest of your life. And I think this is actually something that's, everybody, you just need to make this a course if you're going to shoot digital. The same way as when you're shooting film, that you find a way to keep your images accessible. And the great thing is, like, I got 2 copies of everything. That's something I could never do with film. Yeah, that's a little bit of how we work, what we like to do on shoots, and I think we have a little bit of time for questions. So if you guys want to bring up the house lights, I'll be happy to answer anything I can for you guys. Yes, sir. Yes.
You mentioned a website you were using that provided a template. Which one is that?
It's the company is aphotofolio. They're aphotofolio.com. I just like basically the template solution, because I know so many photographers who have these amazing flash websites that they spend $5,000 on, and they look beautiful the day they come out, and 5 years later you go back on it, it's exactly the same website. These are flash websites, but they're constantly updatable, where I can change the order of images, I can add images, I can add a whole gallery of images. if I'm presenting my book to somebody specifically for a certain project, I can send them a link to those particular images of interest. I can even like reorder the website on the fly where suddenly, oh, the first gallery that comes up is no longer the celebrity images, it's sports images because I'm up for a big sports job. So there's, a lot of flexibility that way.
Brian, what percentage of your work goes into magazines and, regarding expenses and getting paid well, for doing this type of work?
Well, I think, the big key actually for magazine photography is particularly in shooting celebrity. Your payout isn't necessarily at the time that you do the shoot, it's that, 1% of the images that get used again and again and again, or 1% of the shoots, I should say, where it's like, the shoot of Richard Branson was probably better than shooting an advertising campaign, because those images got used on covers all around the world, and that's why you want to make sure that you maintain the rights to your images. I've been lucky because over the, it's kind of changed right now because the magazines like newspapers are trying to, stay viable, but I've been lucky for years to do, by far the majority of my work is for magazines. Maybe, in the past it might have been as high as 95% of the shoots that I was doing were magazine shoots. It's probably dropped in the last 2 years to a higher percentage of commercial, but I think what's really the key with everybody is, with magazines, make sure you own your copyright. A lot of the images will never be used again, but the ones that are, can be the difference between being able to survive as an artist versus asking somebody what size latte they need that day. So, it's like, that's what keeps my studio afloat.
Do you mind going back to your workspace again? Can I
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's only one whole frame.
Yeah.
There's my naked golfers up there. So.
Thanks.
Is that your favorite work?
That is. Actually, like, if you ask me what's really, really true to my heart and what I've had so much fun, it's naked golfers and burlesque dancers. It's like if you're able to shoot one or the other in your lifetime, you're a lucky person if you get to shoot both. You're like blessed. So, very, very fortunate.
Can you give a little, talk a little bit about how much and what kinds of instruction you give your subject?
It varies. It's like one of the things is, as a photographer, that is a fantastic question because you just touched on something I forgot to talk about. One of the things that's really, really important is you become like a 15-second psychoanalyst of people. You walk into different situations and everybody reacts differently, and you kind of have to figure out what approach to take with different people. And, somebody, for instance, someone like Marlon Wayans, I don't have to give Marlon any type of a clue of what to do in front of a camera because he's fantastic. He moves really good, he has a lot of fun. If anything, it's a kind of case of hold on for a second while I catch up with him and move this light real quick. But somebody like that who's really good in front of a camera, I'll light things very, very broadly so that they've got a lot of room to work. On the other hand, I also shoot, CEOs and, for instance, one of the very successful early shoots we did was a shoot of Bill Gates that I think we were probably the first people that actually styled him because my wife showed up with a black turtleneck to put him in, which I swear to God is like Steve Jobs saw that and completely ripped off our look for himself. So we had Bill Gates in a black turtleneck because it's a case of like he's not that comfortable in front of a camera, and sometimes it's like somebody who doesn't know what to do, you need to make them very, very comfortable, and sometimes even just changing their wardrobe, they have a different attitude where suddenly he's not wearing his button-down shirt with cardigan vest, he's badass in a black turtleneck, you know, and sometimes it can be that simple. So the answer is really when people are great in front of the camera, you stay out of the way. You don't stop it when everything is going great. You know, make sure that you don't get in the way of a great photograph. On the other hand, when people aren't comfortable, like, you know, all the time we're like, okay, turn your hips more this way, you know, and ways to pose people where it's more flattering or looking more comfortable, or you know, sometimes it's even finding, you know, like the CEO that we photographed in the lobby, just finding a situation where suddenly he's not standing behind his desk, but he's standing on basically a set. You know, people react differently to those things, and sometimes it's just putting people in a position where they kind of feel differently or feel comfortable one way or another can help a lot that way. Yeah.
Hey Brian, do you always do all your post-processing, and then what is your workflow like?
Yeah, I do all my post-processing. There are a few times where we've known we have such little time, and I'll bring in somebody and basically direct them what I need. But I've always done like the 5 months, like if it's just a case of needing somebody to, you know, help sort through at the web gallery creation stage. So what I do after we shoot the job is I, you know, download all the cards and folders. I do a real quick edit. Just because I started off using Bridge, I find it so much quicker in Bridge to go through and, you know, delete the images with the eyes closed. And I know people never ever throw away any picture because they might need a part of it, but, you know, I shoot so much stuff that's similar that, you know, it's not a case like, oh, I needed the foot from that particular image, I'll probably find one. So unless there is some, you know, on the other hand, if there's an image where somebody's eyes closed but the pose and everything's perfect, I might save that and just bring it ahead from something else. But I get rid of a lot of the crap and then order everything together and immediately rename it. I've heard all these naming structures where people go, you know, year, date, month, underscore, stock, underscore, or assignment, underscore, like, and it ends up being like 6,000 characters. Mine are really simple. Like in like the 1980s when I started shooting film, I numbered my jobs as the last 2 digits of the year, dash, and then a 3-digit code. So like the first job of this year is 10-001. So that's how my file name starts off, just like, you know, something I did in 1988 might be 88-097. So it's like I start off with that, I'll do an underscore, the name of the person, and then typically a 3-digit sequence number. Obviously if I shoot more than 1,000, it becomes a 4-digit, but rarely on any shoot of anybody do I do over 1,000 images. Typically it's more, you know, 150 to 400 or 500. Then once they're resequenced and renamed, I'll go through and I'll apply, before anything goes out, and this is really important, is you embed the metadata in the file. So I've got templates in Bridge, I've got templates in Lightroom. The most important thing is, you know, you put in that copyright notice that's like, you know, who's the creator, how can they contact you, all of that thing. I mean, you know, as photographers, everybody's like, I'm not putting, you know, my email address in the file. It's like, yeah, well, if somebody finds it and actually wants to license the image, of course you put it in, you know. So all that stuff goes in there, and then I bring the stuff into Lightroom because I can do so much stuff so much quicker in Lightroom. It's batches, and pretty much at that point, you know, I kind of have my selection. A lot of times with the magazine, you know, it might be 100 images because they may have a number of different ways that they can go with it. I want to give them some flexibility.